Language does something to the brain that most people have never been taught to understand. Specific words, not just their meaning, but their structure, their timing, and the emotional state they create in the listener, activate the brain's social bonding and attraction systems in ways that are completely documented in neuroscience research. And the reason most men stumble in conversation with women they're attracted to is not confidence, not looks, not timing. It is that they are using words that activate the wrong neural systems entirely. This video covers the specific language patterns that activate the right ones, the ones that create genuine warmth, genuine interest, and genuine desire, not through manipulation, but through the kind of communication that the female brain is neurologically wired to respond to most powerfully. Here is a finding from neurolinguistics that should fundamentally change how anyone thinks about the relationship between words and attraction. Research from UCLA's Brain Mapping Center found that the words a person hears do not just communicate meaning, they activate emotional states. Specific word patterns produce measurable changes in brain activity, cortisol levels, and oxytocin release. The brain does not separate the content of a message from the emotional experience of receiving it. They arrive together, and the emotional experience, not the content, is what the brain stores, what it associates with the person who delivered it, and what shapes how it feels about that person going forward. This finding has profound implications for attraction, because it means that the way something is said, the specific words chosen, the emotional framing applied, the specific neural systems those words activate, determines not just whether the message was understood, but whether the person delivering it becomes associated with positive emotional states in the listener's brain. And positive emotional states consistently associated with one specific person are the neurological substrate of genuine desire. Linguist Deborah Tannen, whose decades of research on gendered communication patterns has made her one of the most widely cited scholars in the field, has documented extensively that men and women tend to use language for fundamentally different social purposes. Men tend to use language to exchange information and establish status. Women tend to use language to build connection and establish emotional rapport. Neither approach is better or worse. But when a man uses exclusively information and status language with a woman who is processing language through a connection and rapport framework, the communication doesn't just land differently, it misses the neural target entirely. This video covers 6 specific language patterns that hit the right target. 6 categories of words and communication structures that activate the brain's bonding, recognition, and emotional connection systems, backed by research in neuroscience, psychology, and linguistics. And before we get to pattern number 1, I need to flag something about pattern 4. It is the one that most contradicts what men are typically taught about attractive communication, and it is the one the research consistently identifies as the most powerful of the 6. We'll build toward it, but first, let's establish exactly what the brain is looking for. This first pattern sounds simple. It is not simple at all. And the difference between doing it correctly and doing it incorrectly is the difference between someone feeling profoundly understood and someone feeling mildly patronized. Here is the psychology. When a person shares something, an opinion, a feeling, a description of an experience, they have chosen specific words to express it. Those words are not random. They are the words that felt most accurate to their internal experience. And when someone reflects those exact words back, not a paraphrase, not a summary, not an interpretation, but the specific language the person used, the brain registers something remarkable. It registers. This person received what I actually said, not what they decided I meant. Research from Carl Rogers' foundational work on empathic communication, work that has been replicated and expanded across decades of psychology research, found that the experience of having one's exact words reflected back with genuine attentiveness produces a neurological response associated with deep recognition and safety. The brain's threat detection system, which is always running a background assessment of social interactions, essentially reports this person is not reinterpreting me through their own framework. They are receiving me as I actually am. That report, I am being received as I actually am, is one of the rarest and most powerful experiences available in human interaction. And it is generated by something as technically simple as using her exact words rather than substituting your own. She says, I just felt completely overwhelmed by it. The average response reaches for a synonym. Yeah, that sounds really stressful. The response that hits the neurological target says, overwhelmed. What does that feel like when it shows up for you? Her word, her experience, her framework, not yours. The brain notices this instantly, and it begins associating this specific person with the feeling of being genuinely received. The second pattern activates one of the most powerful social bonding mechanisms in the human brain, the experience of being included in someone's imagined future. Psychologist John Bowlby's attachment research established that human beings have a fundamental need to feel that they matter to specific other people, not just in the current moment, but in a sustained, ongoing way. The attachment system is not satisfied by present warmth alone. It responds most powerfully to evidence of future relevance, evidence that the person who matters to you is someone who will still matter to you tomorrow, next week, in a context that doesn't yet exist. Future inclusion language creates this evidence. It is the difference between language that is entirely present-focused and language that places the other person naturally and casually inside a forward-looking frame. Not, I'm going to that concert next month, but there's a concert next month that I think you genuinely love. Have you heard of them? Not, I've been thinking about trying that restaurant, but I've been thinking about that restaurant. You'd have strong opinions about the menu, wouldn't you? Casual, natural, not a grand declaration of long-term intention, just language that communicates without making a statement of it, that this person is already occupying space in your thoughts about the future. The neuroscience of this is well documented. Researcher Helen Fisher's brain imaging studies of attraction found that one of the most consistent markers of genuine romantic interest is what she describes as intrusive thinking, the involuntary occupation of one's thoughts by a specific person. Future inclusion language is, in effect, the linguistic expression of this state. It communicates, you are already in my thoughts about things that haven't happened yet. And the brain that receives this communication responds with a warmth and connection that is disproportionate to the apparent smallness of the gesture. The third pattern is deceptively powerful, and the research on why it works is both specific and surprising. Most compliments and expressions of interest are generic. You're really interesting. You're so funny. I love talking to you. These are pleasant to receive. They produce a mild positive response, but they do not produce the neurological response associated with genuine desire because they could have been said to anyone. The brain, which is extraordinarily good at detecting authenticity, registers generic appreciation as generic. And generic in the context of attraction is the emotional equivalent of neutral. Specific language is different. Specific language requires that the speaker actually paid attention, that they received something particular about this specific person and retained it, and the experience of knowing that someone was paying close enough attention to retain something specific about you is, neurologically, the experience of mattering. Research from social psychologist Roy Baumeister, whose work on belonging and the need to matter has produced some of the most foundational findings in the field, established that the felt sense of mattering to another person, of being genuinely attended to rather than generically acknowledged, is one of the most powerful, positive social experiences available to humans. It activates the brain's reward system. It produces oxytocin, and it creates a lasting positive association with the person who generated the experience. Specific language sounds like, the way you described that situation earlier, the part about the silence before anything happened. That specific detail told me more about how you think than anything else you said. Or, You said something 20 minutes ago that I'm still thinking about. Or, the way you framed that is not how anyone else I've talked to about this has framed it. And I think your version is more honest than the standard one. Every one of these is specific. Everyone requires genuine attention. And everyone communicates without stating it that this person was worth paying close attention to. The brain receives that communication and begins building something. This fourth pattern contradicts most of what men are taught, and it is the pattern the research identifies as the most powerful on this entire list. The conventional wisdom about attraction and language is built on confidence. Be certain, be decisive, project clarity and direction. Uncertainty in the conventional framework is weakness. Hesitation is unattractive. Doubt is the enemy of desire. The research disagrees, specifically and consistently. Psychologist James Pennebaker, whose decades of research on language and psychological health at the University of Texas at Austin produced some of the field's most cited findings, found that the use of what he calls cognitive complexity language, words that express genuine thinking, genuine uncertainty, genuine processing, was among the strongest predictors of authentic connection and trust in interpersonal communication. Words like, I've been thinking about, I'm not entirely sure, but this might be wrong, but I've been wondering and I don't have this figured out yet communicate something that certainty language cannot. That the person speaking is genuinely engaged in the actual complexity of experience rather than performing a settled position they've pre-decided. And here is the key finding. Women, in study after study on communication preference and attraction, report significantly higher levels of genuine interest and connection in response to men who express authentic uncertainty than in response to men who project consistent certainty. Not because uncertainty itself is attractive, but because authentic uncertainty is the linguistic signature of genuine honesty. And genuine honesty in the emotional and neurological framework through which attraction is processed is one of the most compelling qualities a person can demonstrate. The brain that encounters someone willing to say, I genuinely don't know how I feel about that yet, is encountering someone who is not managing their presentation, someone who is actually present in the complexity of their own experience. And presence, real, unmanaged, honest presence, is what desire responds to most powerfully, not the performance of certainty. This is not an invitation to perform uncertainty strategically. The research is clear that performed uncertainty reads as performed and produces the opposite response. The invitation is to stop suppressing genuine uncertainty in the name of appearing confident. The genuine version is what the research says works, and it works because it is true. The fifth pattern is subtle in its mechanics and powerful in its effect, and it operates almost entirely below conscious awareness, which is exactly why it works the way it does. The human brain has a social categorization system that is constantly running in background during every interaction. It sorts the people in any given interaction into categories, in-group and out-group, same team and different team, us and not us. This categorization is not deliberate. It is automatic. And it is deeply consequential for attraction, because research from social psychology consistently shows that in-group categorization, the experience of being on the same team as another person, is one of the foundational conditions for genuine connection and desire. Collaborative language, language that uses we structures, that assumes shared perspective, that frames things as something both people are navigating together rather than as something one person is presenting to another, activates the in-group categorization response. It communicates below the level of conscious processing that the two people in this conversation are already on the same team. Not, you should try this, but we should try this. Not, I think this is interesting, but something about this seems significant to both of us, doesn't it? Not, what do you think about that, but where do you think that leaves us? Neuroscientist Hasson at Princeton, whose research on neural coupling during communication found that speakers and listeners whose brains synchronized most strongly showed the highest levels of mutual understanding and connection, identified collaborative framing. Linguistic structures that position both parties as joint participants in a shared experience as one of the variables most associated with strong neural synchrony. The brains of people in genuinely collaborative conversation literally begin to mirror each other's activity, and that mirroring is, at the level of neuroscience, what the experience of genuine connection actually is. The sixth and final pattern is the one that produces the most immediate and most disproportionate response of all because it requires something that almost no conversation ever delivers. Most people experience being seen through the things they present, their appearance, their stated opinions, their deliberate self-presentation. What almost nobody experiences is being seen through the things they didn't present, the things they revealed without intending to, the things that were visible to genuine attention but invisible to ordinary interaction. Observation language reaches for those things. It notices the specific, unannounced, unintentional details that reveal something true about a person, and then names them gently and specifically without making a statement of it. Not, "You're really smart," but "the way you held back that specific opinion until you were sure of it." That's not how most people approach a conversation. Not, "You seem thoughtful," but "there was a moment about 10 minutes ago where you completely changed what you were about to say. What happened there?" Not, "You're interesting," but "something you haven't said yet is the most important part of what you're thinking. I can see it." Research from developmental psychologist Daniel Stern, whose work on moments of meeting, those rare interpersonal moments where one person genuinely perceives another person's inner state rather than their social presentation, identified these moments as producing some of the most significant and lasting neurological and relational effects in human interaction. The feeling of being perceived at that level, of having someone notice what you didn't arrange for them to notice, produces a response that is qualitatively different from being appreciated, complimented, or even deeply understood. It produces the feeling of being truly seen. And the person who generates that feeling becomes associated in the brain's deepest social processing systems with something rare and irreplaceable. Here is what all 6 of these language patterns share and why they work in the direction they do. None of them are performances. None of them are lines or techniques designed to produce a reaction regardless of genuine connection. Every single one of them is a linguistic expression of something real. Real attention, real honesty, real collaborative presence, real perception of the specific person in front of you. Specific recognition language says, "I received what you actually said." Future inclusion language says, "You are already in my thoughts about what comes next." Specificity language says, "I was genuinely paying attention." Honest uncertainty language says, "I am actually present in my own experience rather than managing my presentation." Collaborative language says, "We are already on the same team." Observation language says, "I see the parts of you that you didn't arrange to be seen." Together, these 6 patterns create the linguistic environment for something the female brain responds to more powerfully than almost any other social experience: the experience of being genuinely, specifically, honestly known by another person. That experience, when it occurs, does not require analysis or understanding. The brain generates the response directly. The desire builds from the inside out, from the felt sense of genuine recognition, and it builds in a direction that words, for once, are entirely capable of creating. Now, before this video ends, there is something that extends everything we just covered into the most important application it has. We spent this video on the language patterns that create genuine connection and desire, but language is only half of a conversation. The other half is the questions. The specific, psychologically grounded questions that invite a woman into the kind of genuine self-disclosure and mutual vulnerability that the research consistently identifies as the fastest path to real intimacy. Because here is what becomes possible when you combine the language patterns from this video with the right questions. You create a conversational experience that most people go their entire lives without having. An experience of being simultaneously seen and asked for, of having someone use language that demonstrates genuine attention while also asking questions that reach for the genuine, unperformed, wanting version of who you are. That combination is not a technique. It is what real connection actually feels like from the inside. And the video on your screen right now covers the question side of this equation completely. It is called Questions to Ask a Woman for Intimacy, the psychology behind what actually opens her up. It covers Arthur Aaron's interpersonal closeness research, the 5 categories of questions that build genuine emotional intimacy, and exactly why certain questions reach the parts of a person that ordinary conversation never touches. The words open the space, the questions fill it. Both together is the full picture. Watch it now.